Welcome to the Thought Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Isabella Sanchez Castañeda. Let's jump right in. Welcome back to the Thought Leaders Podcast. Today, I have a thought leader in the weight loss space, but this is not going to be a conversation about calories in, calories out, or something that's going to make you feel really icky about your food choices, because I have Sam on the podcast. And I want to start first and foremost with something that I saw on Sam's podcast months ago, which was really taking time away from your phone when you're eating and just bringing mindfulness into your eating practice. Tell me a little bit more about why that is something that you tell your clients.
Well, first of all, hi everybody. But also, it's because we're all so busy. Like nowadays, like we have our phones with us. We want to watch Netflix with our partner. When we're out brunch with our girlfriends, we're like talking to each other. We're not really paying attention to like the food around us. And I think it's important to just have a little bit of respect and also like peace with your food. And I think like the way I come about this concept is like if you went on a date with someone, you wouldn't be checking your phone. You wouldn't be like trying to multitask, right? But when it comes to your food, like you got to treat it like you're going on a date with it. You want to experience the flavor of the food. You want to be able to enjoy it and understand what you're eating and like really paying attention to how it makes you feel. And I think when you do that, not only do you like actually stop before you get to the overeating point, but you feel good about the amount that you're eating and you become more satisfied. Because if you think about it, like, have you guys ever went to like the movie theaters and you're eating popcorn and you're like eating the popcorn bag, watching the movie, and then before you realize it, you're like at the bottom of the bag and you're like, oh my gosh, like, did that just happen? Like, I don't even remember eating this whole thing. And now you want more just to keep yourself like occupied. So that's why it's so important to just have a moment with your food. It shows respect, but also I think it helps you build just this connection with your body that maybe you haven't built in a long time because of like dieting, or maybe because you're so used to remembering like your parents being at work all the time, and that's the only way you were able to keep yourself busy. So it brings up a lot, but also it's so helpful because you're practicing just honoring your body during those times. And if you think about it, we don't really have much time to really honor our body throughout the day because we're also focused on work.
Absolutely. I think it's such a great tip, and it's so simple yet so hard to implement. And so many times now when I pick up my phone when I'm eating, I'm like, oh, Sam would hate this. But I still do it. But the other thing that you're really known for is demystifying like or breaking the myth that we have to let go of cultural foods in order to lose weight. And I really think that that's so important to emphasize. So can you tell me a little bit more about how that came to be part of your practice?
Yeah, so I have been in my weight loss journey for 11 years. So as of 2024, it's been 11 years. And when I first started my journey, I remember going on YouTube and Google, and Instagram just started at the time. And so I was searching up like how to eat healthier. And everything that I came across of was like, oh, chicken breast and broccoli, quinoa, and applesauce and granola bars. And it was just very like, okay, I don't eat these things growing up. Like I never had these foods. And every single time I went on YouTube, and you know how you watch people like what I eat in a day, how to lose weight, like they'll show you what they have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but all of it was like the westernized culture of foods. And then I remember feeling super excited seeing these Gymshark athletes at the time. They were people of color, and I was so excited to follow them because I'm like, oh my gosh, they have like they look like me and they're probably going to be eating the foods like me. And then they show me like a what I eat in a day, and I'm like, they're eating like the American diet, and they're not even eating like egg rolls. They're not eating fried rice at all, right? They're like staying away from rice. And so when I saw that, it made me feel like it was wrong for me to eat my cultural foods. And for a long time in my journey, I actually didn't eat my mom's cooking. I also like didn't want to eat at home because I was like, this is looked bad. And also, if you all looked at the media at the time, Asian food was actually like there was a lot of bad stuff about it. Like there's MSG and there's just it's not healthy for you. And so I stayed away from my culture foods a lot when I started my journey. And it really ripped a part of my cultural identity because I just felt like I was eating oatmeal, chicken breast and broccoli, and it was really boring. And I missed out on connecting with my family, connecting with my mom when I went away from college. And it was a lonely time. Like, even though I got to my dream body, I didn't feel good and I also didn't feel included. And so I think it's an important conversation to have on how not diverse the nutrition world is, and also like a lot of the things that you would see on Google when you're searching up things of how to eat healthier. It's really Americanized, and I think that's where many of us, I guess people of color, we we get misguided because we think that's the right way.
Yeah, and something that you're really emphasizing is also the relationship not only to food, but how food impacts our relationships. So much of Western diet culture is about individual meal prepping. It's not taking into consideration the cultural relationship to sharing a meal. And it's just so interesting. So when people come into working with you one-on-one and they are struggling with breaking some of these habits and breaking some of these dieting habits, what is the first thing that you're really working on them with?
I let my clients eat whatever they want. And when I give them that permission, they're almost like, "What? I came in here. I thought you were going to tell me exactly what to eat, how to make this healthier." And I'm like, "Yeah, we'll eventually get to a place where like you can make these foods healthier. But like you first have to unlearn diet culture by proving to yourself that when you do eat chocolate, when you do eat egg rolls, when you do eat your tamale or your dim sum, that you're not going to go overboard. And you're not going to go overboard because you're letting yourself have it when you want it." So, the first thing that I do with my clients is we don't even try to change like their eating habits right away. Like, I'm like, just eat what you want to really eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and tell me how you feel when you eat the meals that you genuinely want to eat. Usually, when my clients notice that they're like, "Oh, I'm actually eating what I want, not just eating to lose weight," they actually eat less. And they actually have less cravings that's going to feel like it's out of control because they gave themselves permission to have what they want. And so that's the first step. It's like giving yourself the permission to just have what you want and build that trust and evidence for yourself that you can create a good experience with this. Because what I've noticed with all of my clients is they've had bad experiences with their culture foods. Like every single time they have it after they've lost weight, they're like, "It was the food, it was the rice that caused me to gain weight." Or they're like, "It was the carbs, like the tacos that made me 20 pounds heavier." And I'm like, "No, it can't be just one type of food. It was like you were staying away from it for so long. And now, like, let's say you lost the weight, you gave yourself permission to eat the foods that you really want to eat. And then it all just kind of went from 0 to 100 really quickly. And then that's how you gain the weight back." And so it's like helping them understand that it wasn't a specific type of food that caused them to gain weight in the first place. It was more of the restricting.
Yeah, and that's so helpful, also for that permission to make it sustainable. How did you first come to realize that it would be more sustainable this way versus what you were trying before?
Yeah, it was after college. Because in college I was tracking calories and macros. I did calories and macros for 3 to 4 years straight. So it was like my fitness pal in and out. And I remember moving back home from college and I'm like, I can't keep tracking this because my mom keeps cooking good food and I don't know how I'm supposed to add all these ingredients into my fitness pal. And so I remember telling myself, "Okay, Sam, if you can't track calories and macros forever, I think you need to stop doing it because otherwise it just doesn't make sense?" And so I gave myself permission to delete my fitness pal. And at the time, I was like, let me just eat what I really want to eat. And I would eat like what my mom cooked. I would like actually eat what I wanted for dinner. And I started noticing like, oh, like the next time when my mom cooked the same thing, I didn't really want it. I was like, I don't really want that today. Like, I actually want to eat something else. And I started asking myself, like, what do I want to eat? And that really like opened up this door for me of like, I'm not overeating. Like, I'm not overeating on her like pork and bok choy stir fry. I'm like, you know what? I've had this already. It's fine. And it just gave me like so much control because I remember going into the weekend and not feeling like I needed to have a cheat weekend or like a cheat meal because I had what I really wanted to have throughout the week. And I kept practicing that over and over. Now, at the time, it was very scary because I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know. I'm just kind of playing around and just seeing if this is going to help me get rid of the tracking calories mentality. And I stuck with it for the whole summer because, when you graduate, it's like around May, and I did that for the whole summer up until fall again. And I just remember, like, this is working. Like, I just remember weighing myself, didn't gain any weight. I was still active at the time, but I'm like, something's working because I'm not gaining weight eating the foods that I, grew up with. But also, like, if I can maintain my weight here, then there's actually a way where I can lose weight and still eat this way. And I started playing around with understanding the foods that I was putting in my body. So because I track calories, I got really good at reading nutrition label, and so I started just educating myself on the foods that was from my culture, and I started swapping out ingredients and having fun with it. So now I don't make like egg rolls with pork anymore. I make it with ground turkey. Whenever I have like a green boiled pork soup, I don't have it with like pork belly, like what we would use in our culture, but I use like pork chop or something more lean. And so I started noticing like, oh, it has nothing to do with like the type of foods. It had more to do with like me understanding the foods that I was already eating in my culture and like how can I play around with it. And it became this really fun idea of just figuring out and educating myself more and more on the different types of dishes that I was eating.
Yeah, a lot of it sounds like permission, right? Like just giving yourself that room to explore and be a person. And I really want to dive into the impact that that has on people's mental health because you mentioned you were doing, 3 to 4 years of counting every calorie, every macro. What impact now does having this freedom and this permission have on your mental health?
Oh my gosh, like so much. Like now I don't have the macros and calories conversation in my mind. Like I have a lot of brain space, and I think that says a lot, right? Especially when you're someone who struggled with your weight for a long time, or you never really had a healthy relationship with food, and then you add diet culture on top of it. It's like that's the first thing you think about when you wake up, and then the last thing you think about before you go to sleep. And when you really unlearn these things and you realize like that I don't have to do it this way, but you give yourself that permission, like I was mentioning earlier, it's like it's not living in your brain. And then you have a capacity to think about other stuff. So I remember when I stopped dieting, like that gave me permission to start posting on Instagram about my fitness journey. And like I had more what is it, room to kind of play around with the different content that I wanted to put out, but also like I had more capacity to hang out with my friends and not really think about like, oh, what are we gonna eat when we're hanging out, or if my friend wanted to travel or my family wanted to travel. Because I remember when I graduated, we actually went on a trip to go visit my grandparents in Laos and Thailand. Like that, I was like, I don't really have to worry too much about this. Like I'm starting to build that trust where no matter where I go, like food and my weight isn't the first thing that I'm thinking about. And that saves you a lot of time, but also you get to have more fun because you're not so serious about every single food that you're like taking in.
Absolutely. And so you started mentioning that you began posting content. What made you decide that you wanted this to be your business, that you wanted this to be something that you helped other people with?
It definitely started when people kept asking me, like even my family and friends, they were like, aren't you trying to lose weight? Like, why are you eating the egg rolls? Like, why are you eating like because we will have these like buffet style food at like our family events. I'm like, oh no, like I can actually have this. And they kept questioning me, like, how do you have this and have the progress that you had? And so I just kept getting questions, and I'm like, you know what? Let me just start posting things on Instagram. And I would start like sharing my journey at the time and just kind of sharing like how I went about it. And it just started building an audience from there. Now, I do just want to give some context. Before I even started posting fitness content, I used to be a beauty influencer. So if you go on YouTube, and you go on my YouTube channel, I have a lot of makeup tutorial at the time. It's still up there, but then my whole Instagram page was all about beauty. But I didn't have the passion for it anymore because it was more outer appearance focused, and I was going through my own journey of really healing my relationship with my body image, my food, and exercise. And so I pivoted to fitness, and I started posting about my journey when I started the weight loss journey, and like sharing my advice to people, and also the questions that my family and friends were asking. So that's how it came all about. It was just like, I'm just gonna answer these questions because I can't answer every single person that comes and talk to me. So yeah.
That's very cool. And it's great that it kind of came out of just being inspired to talk about it and being inspired to continue content creation, but in a different way. However, that is not easy. And then turning it into something where you're actually coaching people on it is not easy. And so I'm wondering why you've kept going. Why is it that it's something you're still doing to this day?
Yeah. Honestly, I just have a passion for it. If any of you listening like have a business or is a full-time entrepreneur, y'all know that shit is hard. And like there's gonna be some high and lows. And when the lows are lows, they're really low. And you question yourself whether you want to do this and whether you should get a job, or you start thinking about all these different ways of like quitting, right? But what's been making me continue the work that I do is the impact that my clients have, but also like the habits that they've created that they pass on to their kids or their nieces and nephew. And I hear these stories so often because even after my clients coach with me, like I still follow up with them a year or two or three later, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like I still remember our coaching calls. This is where I'm at in my journey now." I've realized that it's become just more than the program. It has become this whole generational health building. And that really inspires me because I can't even imagine what the next generation is going to look like, especially with the clients that I coach, like the people that come after them, experiencing a healthy relationship with food, and not having to strip away their cultural identity and just not having to think about their weight. That has been like my rock, is like thinking about that impact, but also like thinking about me, right? Like I'm the first one in my family to be healthy. And I see so much of the changes that it has created for my parents. Like now my parents are like, oh my gosh, like we should just eat like parboiled rice and brown rice now. And they go to the gym, they work out. But if I didn't start, like they would not be where they're at today. And same goes for my siblings. And so I think it's just like seeing the different habits that it has helped with the people that come after me and the people that I have directly impacted, and that gets me through like the rough days where I'm like, there's no one else that's doing it like me. And I say that because when I started my journey, I looked up to a lot of fitness influencer. I follow a lot of these accounts, and I always felt like there was something missing. Like I want to see their cultural foods. I wanted to see them live eating the foods that they really enjoyed. By the time these people, they were mainly dieting, and I didn't see that as an example. And so for me to see that gap and to just fill that gap with the work that I do, I'm like, no one else is talking about this. No one else is doing this from a cultural perspective, right? And that's like, all right, Sam, you got to be the person that do it then. Like you have to be the person who does it, because if you're not going to do it, who else is going to do it?
Absolutely. And I know that the clients that you're alluding to are grateful that you do it and that you've stuck with it. And so that's amazing. I am curious, there are probably people who have gotten on and off the diet train so many times, and they hear you share that it can be easier, it can be different, but maybe they're struggling to find that motivation to try one more time. What would you say to that person who's like, I know I want to be healthier, but I just can't do this one more time?
You have to look at the diets that you've tried, like everything that you've tried to lose weight, as a lesson. That was something that I had to sit with because I remember being in the same boat. Like I'm trying everything. Like I did intermittent fasting, I did Whole30, I did the apple cider vinegar, I did the diarrhea, not the diarrhea, but I did the tea detox that gave you diarrhea. I did the weight loss pills, like anything that you can name of. I've done it all. And I just remember having so much shame. Like something's wrong with me. My body's broken. Obviously, it's just a me problem because it worked for everybody else. So if you have that conversation in your head too, like, I completely get you. But what really got me out of that was me asking myself, like, but what did I learn though? Keto taught me that I love carbs. Intermittent fasting taught me that I'm a breakfast person. That's why that didn't last. The apple cider vinegar taught me that I don't need a detox. Like, my body detox naturally. I could just drink water. It's just as good. And I remember like taking weight loss pills. That suppressed it a lot of my appetite and it made me sick. Like, I felt nauseous after taking it. And I learned that I didn't need, like, starving myself and not feeling my hunger was like the worst thing. Like, I wanted to get better at that. And so I want you to, like, instead of looking at your failures as it's because of me, like my body's broken, like, look at it as like, what did you not like about the diets? What did you learn from it? Because when you start to notice that, like, you didn't even like it in the first place, of course, like, you're gonna realize that that's why it didn't last. And that was like the breakthrough that I had for myself. Of course, if you love carbs, of course, like, you were only gonna be able to lose weight for a small period amount of time. And then when you ate carbs again, when you had rice, you were gonna gain the weight back. And that just helped me make sense in my head, you know? And I think that's the first piece of it. And then the second piece of it is just having compassion for yourself, especially when you're a woman. Like, our body is being nitpicked all the time with the magazines that we consume, with society's expectation. And then when you think about cultural expectation, like in the Asian culture, you have to be skinny thin. That's like the beauty, right? And you have to have light skin. And so it's just like there's so many like beauty standards that's different in different cultures. So I think like recognizing that falling into those patterns is gonna make sense. Um, and it's okay for you to fall into those patterns as long as, like, you know it didn't come from you. I think it's easy to point the fingers back to yourself and say that it's all your fault when really you have been influenced in some way.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I really like the perspective of what did everything you tried before teach you. And I know that this is such a sensitive topic for so many listeners and so many people as a whole. And so approaching it from this perspective of compassion and of openness is refreshing. I know we don't have a ton of time, but like I would love to also hear how you're changing your relationship with food, change your relationship to movement as well.
It was actually through strength training. So, I did not start changing my relationship with food until I started like strength training, which is also another word for it is weightlifting. And it was because through weightlifting, you had to eat more if you wanted to get stronger. And I remember at the time, I'm like, well, I don't want to eat more. And then I'm like, well, but I don't want to be weak. Like, I wanted to live more. And so I was like, okay, well, we got to like find a middle here. And so I started eating more and I started lifting heavier. And I realized like, oh, it's not just about calories in and out. It's like my calories that I'm consuming is actually helping me in some way. And I was actually feeling better at the time too, because throughout my restricting phase, I was eating like 1,200 calories a day, which is enough for like a toddler. Imagine functioning 1,200 calories a day. Like, I was not in the right space of mind, but it just helped me change. Like, oh, like I'm not eating to burn these off later. I'm eating to actually be stronger. And that helped me build a better relationship with food. And also, it helped me not label food as good or bad because I noticed how certain types of food made me feel. So, for example, if I had white rice with a stir fry before I went lifting, I noticed that I wasn't as strong because of the quality of foods that I was eating, and I felt a little bit more heavier and just bloated, and my energy wasn't there, so I couldn't really go for as long as I wanted to. Versus when I had brown rice and I picked like a leaner like chicken curry, right? And I would have that and I would go work out. I just noticed the difference in my energy level and how much more I could lift because of the quality of foods that I was being intentional about consuming. And so that helped me really feel confident and like, oh, I do know what works for my body and I do know like what my body is saying when it's talking to me, and I'm just collecting that data and I'm just playing around with food. And that made food really fun because for now, like it wasn't like, oh, you have to eat the sugar-free packets of what is it, chocolate, or I had to eat like the what is it, the keto chips, right? It was like I could literally just have anything I want and just kind of see how my body was adjusting to it, and then like change it again the next time. And it wasn't ever this thing where it's like I'm never gonna have that again. It's like, oh, I'm choosing not to have that because I don't like how it makes me feel. And then that helped me just see food as such a different light.
Absolutely. That's such a great journey. And I think you mentioned it's been almost 11 years that you've been on this, and if you could go back 11 years and take one piece of information with you, what do you wish you had started with?
Definitely just listening to my body. That was something that I ignored for years. And I think all of us are, can experience that in some way. Like even right now, like your body's always talking to you. Like whenever I did keto, my body was talking to me about like, girl, you need to eat carbs, like, because you're like literally not thinking straight. And like it's so hard for you to push through work days, right? To do your homework and stuff. And I just remember when I was doing intermittent fasting, like my stomach was grumbling, like it was grumbling like so long throughout the day. And I just like ignored it. And when I was doing cardio, because I was going through this cardio phase, and I was there for 2 hours. I was exhausted, right? And my body was sore, and I just kept training because I was training 6 to 7 times a week at this time. And so it was like, you need a rest, but I didn't want to rest. So if I could take an advice from, if I could give advice for that version of me, it's just to listen to my body on whatever it is that I'm trying, because that was going to get me closer to my goals eventually. But because I ignored it so much, like it took me 5 to 6 years for me to really feel like, oh, I'm building this connection again.
That's wonderful. And if people need that little bit of extra help listening to their body, or that little bit of extra help on their weight loss journey, what's the best way for them to work with you?
The best way to work with me is in my 6 month one-on-one coaching program. So this program is where I help you lose 20 pounds and keep it off. The reason why it's 6 months is because that's a good amount of time to lose 20 pounds and maintain it. And so that's why the program is structured in that way. And then in the program, we really focus on building habit and structure so that it's easier for you to connect with your body. So like, let's say right now, you don't have a consistent eating schedule, or you just kind of work out whenever you want to, like you're kind of on the fly, right? Like when you have some structure in place, it helps you tune into your body a little bit more, and to really give your body the ability to be like, hey, when I'm hungry, you actually feed me, versus like, hey, how come when I'm hungry on Tuesday you didn't feed me, but on Wednesday you fed me at the same time at noon? And so it's just like building these habits and structure in place so that you can start getting the feedback from your body, and then making adjustments from there to help you lose weight eating the foods that you like. And then that way you can keep it off because you've been building habits that you genuinely enjoy, versus like, I'm just going to do this really quick shortcut. I'm going to suffer short term, and then realizing that you're going to have to suffer long term anyways because you're in that gaining and losing weight cycle all the time.
Amazing. And what is the best way for people to contact you if they would love to work with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Superly Sam. So that's Super LY Sam. I'm also on Facebook as Superly Sam too. And then I have a podcast called Your Winning Journey. I named it Your Winning Journey because if you listen to this and you like, I've been in my weight loss journey. I'm always losing in this journey. You're gonna win. I'm gonna show you how in the podcast. But to work with me, you could just visit any of those links. Click the link in the bio, and then we could book a free sales call to chat to see if it's a great fit.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, sharing your journey with us. And yeah, I just appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.